Oh no, Jeffrey's about to subscribe to her OnlyFans. Don't do it, Jeffrey, that's a waste of money. Don't you realize that there are other things you could spend your money on that would give you a high ROI? You can spend $5 on some things and you'll get 10 or 15 or even $100 back. That's what you should be investing your money into, Jeffrey. If only there was someone to teach Jeffrey what to spend his money on. Adonis. Adonis stops young Jeffrey from putting in his card details. Come, little one, let me show you the way. Step 1, you must invest in yourself. Step 2, you must invest in those that you love. And step 3, you should enjoy yourself. This is the best way to spend money. I kind of got scammed of $78,000 by David Goggins' ghost writing company. Basically, there's companies that will help you write a book. And the way you do that is like you go onto video calls with them like once a week or twice a week, and you kind of like tell them what you want in the book, and then they'll have someone who kind of like writes it up with perfect grammar. And I ended up researching online which company wrote David Goggins' book Can't Hurt Me, and the company was called Scribe. I signed up for a $120,000 package. We were $78K into it and the company went bankrupt, and I basically got like nothing in return. So even though that was like money wasted, I've still wasted tens of thousands of dollars on things that didn't really give me the return that you might expect to buy yourself. One of the first things was the fancy hotels and Airbnbs that I've stayed at. So when I first wanted to make money was like 2019. I had just been to Thailand with a previous girlfriend of mine, and I used to fantasize about becoming a digital nomad, and I used to write in my journal that I could like rent out like a really cool villa. Then finally in 2022, when the COVID lockdown opened up, I ended up achieving this as a goal, and me and my best friend Sam, we flew over to Thailand and stayed in this like really nice villa with an awesome view, and I think it cost us like a few $1,000s a month each. Then the month after that, we were still in Thailand and we stayed in an even better villa after that, which again cost us a solid few $1,000s. And the experience was pretty nice, but I'll be honest, it was a financial constraint. Like it was a stressor to be able to spend like, thousands of dollars on basically rent. And we ended up cutting the trip short because of that, because it just didn't make sense to continue spending like so much money. And here's a problem with staying a little bit longer term in the fancy apartments, the fancy Airbnb and villas. It kind of stops you from being able to feel fine with something below that. Like I remember one moment, my friend Sam will remember this. We got this new villa and I told him like, oh, come look at this. And I was like being proper deep and like inspirational. And I pointed over to the villas that were kind of like higher up than ours. And basically we just assumed that they were better, even though they might not have been, but they were like higher up on the mountain that we were on. And I was saying to him like, bro, this is going to be the worst place that we stay in. And the next place after this is going to be better and it's going to be more expensive. We're going to level up, we're locking in, and this kind of like young man's dream. And the reason why this was a mistake was because what I've realized now at this point is you actually don't need a fancy place that you stay in at all, especially if it's going to stress you out financially. So I've stayed in these villas that I mentioned to you about. I moved to Dubai and my apartment there was $10,000 a month. It was on Airbnb, so it was more expensive, and I was there for like 2 months. I came to Bali a few months ago and I was staying in a 5-star hotel, which was super nice, but it was like $500 a night, and I stayed there for about a month. And I had a good time. Like it was awesome staying there. Every single time I brought basically a girl back to my place, they thought it was like cool as fuck. Like my place was super nice, but it just wasn't worth it. It was only a few months ago I realized that staying in more of these like lavish places, like going onto Airbnb and finding like the expensive place, was never really worth it. Because if you're honest, and I had to be honest to myself, I realized I'm kind of fine with like a plain place, a mattress on the floor. And I think most guys are, right? We don't actually need much when it comes to our living situation. Imagine if like women didn't exist. You would literally just want a bed on the floor as cheap as possible, and it's just safe and clean. That's it. That's like what most guys would want. It's only when we start to think of like impressing people and bringing a girl back, you want like a fancy place. At least that was what it was like with me. That's when I was spending more money. And I journaled once and I was like, wait, I'm putting myself myself under financial stress just to kind of impress random girls that I'm like, I'm being a degenerate with. First of all, I should stop being a degenerate and pursue genuine love as a separate point, but also, why are you seeking external validation? It was a hard pill for me to swallow, to unplug. And I started to look for places that were way, way cheaper. I found this place. Instead of it being about $550 a night, this place was about $50 a night. Still fairly pricey for a lot of people, but to me this has been the cheapest place that I've lived in for years, and it's actually pretty awesome. Like, I actually genuinely like this place more than every other place that I've stayed in. It just genuinely feels like home to me, and I can't even like emphasize that enough. Like, this literally feels like my home, and I've been here for a few months now, and it feels so cheap. It's still, fairly pricey, right? So it's about 1.5k 1.6k a month dollars, which is still fairly pricey for like an apartment for rent, but for me that's less than 2% of my monthly profit, so it feels cheap, right? I had spent money on the fancy places, and I'm telling you from experience, it ain't all that. Always choose the place that is cheaper as long as it seems clean and safe, and then choose a place that's actually closer to the kind of places like the gym that you want to go to every day. I remember seeing a study a while ago which tested the happiness and life fulfillment of two groups of people. One group of people had a longer commute, but they had a nicer place. Like, they had like a place that was more expensive and more lavish. The other group of people had a shorter commute, so they were closer to like the work or the gym or whatever, but their place was like worse, right? Lower quality. And the study wanted to find out like what gives people more happiness, a better place or a shorter commute. And it turns out the shorter commute, because we fantasize about the bigger house, the fancy villas and apartments, but once you've moved into the place and you've been there for like one day, the novelty wears off. It doesn't feel special anymore. Like, yep, that's your room. It's just mundane. It's just, yep, this is where I lived. It's not special once you've been there for like 2-3 days. But what actually affects your real life experiences? Are you under financial stress because it's too expensive, or do you have to commute because that place is further away? I remember in 2022, I went to Dubai for the first time to see Iman Gaji, and I stayed at his apartment. So this was like before he moved to the Palm, and I stayed in this building, right? It was a fancy building. It was like prestigious. It was, I'm pretty sure it was like a $2 million apartment, easily over like 10k a month if it was rented. And I thought it was hype, right? This was like the first time I had seen wealth like this. But when I was asking Iman about the questions, he didn't really give a shit. It was just kind of like his home. He was just adjusted to it. It loses the novelty. I thought that was just because he was like super rich and he wanted to upgrade to somewhere better. But then when I ended up making a bunch of money myself and then living in these fancy places myself, I'm telling you, the novelty wears off really quick from like the fancy places. So for you to save money, consider just remembering in the future to not go for the super expensive place because, the pictures are better on Airbnb. Even when you've got a bunch of money, if you expect to become successful, still choose the place that basically feels like it's for free for you, in the sense of like it's actually so cheap and it's pretty nice. Remember, you don't need much in your living quarters. You just need it to be clean and safe and to have, okay space. But even then, most guys don't need any space at all. And in fact, here's the weird thing. Your life quality is often better with the cheaper place. Let me explain something, right? The first time I came to Bali was in November 2023, and I came with my ex-girlfriend. And so I was in the mode of like, spending it on like fancy Airbnbs and everything. So we were staying in a villa that was $10,000 a month, and it was like 3 bedrooms, 3 stories, 2 swimming pools, fancy as fuck, right? Super cool. And the idea was like, oh, well, if you like take pictures and record content, then it pays for itself, which is complete fucking bullshit, by the way. Like, that's not how marketing works, especially not for like my audience of like intelligent guys. If you've got like an audience of like absolute idiots, they'll respect you more if you've got like a private jet behind you or something like that. My audience are quite based in the sense that they know like materialism's a bit stupid. And so if I ever recorded a video in like a fancy place, you wouldn't really respect me more because you're like an intelligent young man who watches like these kinds of based videos, right? So it didn't even fucking pay off or anything. But here's the thing. It was nice. And we even had like little events. I did 2 barbecues there where we invited like 10, 15, 20 people, private chef, it was a good experience. But it was a stressor to spend that much money. And it was pretty far away from like the places that I wanted to go to. It was pretty secluded. Here's the most interesting part. We became friends with this group of Australians, and they were staying in what's called a guest house. You basically just get like a kind of a small room inside of like a shared kind of nice outdoor building with like a shared kitchen, right? So you get your room and your little toilet, but with a shared kitchen if you wanted to cook or anything, right? And I'm pretty sure they were paying about like $25 a night. Ours was about 300, theirs was about 20. And I remember at one time we went over to their place just in the morning. We were all about to go somewhere, and I actually just started thinking, I was like, in a weird way, I think they're having more fun than I am, because two of the guys were living in the same room together, right? They were good friends. You know, I was in the room with them and we were just laughing and whatever, and I just thought, wait, like their vibe must be so cool. They go to sleep, they've got separate beds of course, but they go to sleep right at the same time in this kind of like masculine disciplined kind of mode. They wake up at the same time super early. The guys were doing this challenge where they'd like wake up and do 50 burpees first thing in the morning. And you know, like imagine that like masculine zest that they had. Their budget was super low. Their financial stress was super low, but their enjoyment, their brotherhood, their socializing was super high. Remember the shared kitchen that I spoke about? Most people in like Bali, they don't really cook, right? You just kind of go to cheap restaurants, whatever. But one time again, when I was round at their place and we're all kind of like walking towards the shared kitchen to fill up some water bottles or something, there's some other girls just kind of sat there who were staying in the same kind of guest house. And one of the guys just ends up getting into a conversation with them. What seemed to me in my mind of like, oh, sharing like a kitchen, I wouldn't do that. This guy was actually taking advantage of it to create new relationships. So here I was in my private villa that's secluded, that was far away from everything. And I can do a fancy event, like have like a private chef come round and everything. But I genuinely started thinking like, I think these guys are having more fun than I am, and they're also not having the financial stress that I am. It made me think that you don't need to spend a crazy amount of money on rent, on the Airbnb, on the hotel. You just need something that's good enough and that doesn't financially stress you out. There's one alternative that I'll say to this, by the way. If you want to have something fancy for one day, that makes sense. So for example, let's say you live kind of low key, you know, like in a place you can really afford, like I'm doing right now. Now let's imagine I go and book out the best villa in Bali, and for one day it's like $1,000. So that seems crazy, like one day, $1,000. But it's just for one day. Let's say it's for like a party, my birthday party, for New Year's, whatever it is. Then it's sick, it's massive, 20 bedrooms, whatever. And I make it like a big event. I've invited everyone I know and everything. That's cool as fuck. Do you see how that's like an experience which we've just maximized the use of that thing? And it's not so much like I've just paid rent, it's that, you know, I've just hosted this event. So keep your rent low. But if you want to splash out once you make some money in the future, go ahead and go get like a nice hotel or a villa for like one day for like an event, birthday party, whatever. But generally keep your 24/7 rent fairly low in an affordable place that preferably is close to the destination you're going to be commuting to every day. I also wasted hundreds of dollars each time on fancy clothes. So again, when I moved, a lot of the stories I'm going to tell in this video are about when I moved to Dubai in 2022. I moved there and I was just so wasteful when it came to like money and with clothing. On one of the first days there, me and my friend go through Dubai Mall or Marina Mall, and there's like a Burberry shop there. Burberry is like this designer brand shop, and we just kind of go in there. And there's this blue shirt that looks kind of nice on me, and it's $400. The most I've ever spent on a shirt before that's maybe like 30 or 50. But we decide it's gonna have a high ROI because I'm here and I'm like this famous celebrity and I'm gonna be doing podcasts, so you need something to wear for it. And it didn't really have the ROI that we thought. Similarly, like I said, with the fancy apartment, the idea is if you're in this kind of business model that I'm doing, maybe if you're growing your Instagram right now and you're thinking in the future, like, yeah, you know, like if I rent the supercar, it's like it pays for itself because of the Instagram picture. It fucking doesn't. You don't make money from like renting this bullshit or anything like that. You only end up making like absolute brain dead people having more respect for you, but they're not the people who end up buying programs and whatever you sell anyway. They're just like the poor people who think like, wow, this guy's in a Lamborghini, he's really successful. They're not the kind of people who actually even have the money to buy anything anyway. But you often lose the respect of anyone who's intelligent in your audience who sees what you're doing, right? But anyway, I bought this shirt. In the same day, we went over to the Nike shop, and this is where it gets absurd, right? I'm wearing a pair of white Air Force Ones, and I see a pair of the same shoes that are on sale. And for some reason, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try those on. And I'm like, oh, you know what, bro? I think these are a little bit more comfortable than my ones. They're the same pair of shoes. And I end up buying the exact same pair of shoes as the one that I'm wearing, they cost like $170. But actually in the Nike store, I spent like $400 because I bought a pair of shorts that were like $90. I bought yoga mats and everything, like short and socks and those kinds of things, right? And here's the most absurd part of it. 1 month later, I end up leaving Dubai, realizing that I didn't actually like this kind of lifestyle. I didn't like the area, whatever. And I don't have that much space to take things in my suitcase. I can't fit in the shoes that I've just bought. So I end up leaving them behind. And before I did that, I'm actually trying to wonder, are these the new pair or my older ones? And I can't even tell. I'm like trying to see which one's kind of a bit more scuffed up. I can't even tell the difference. And I put them on and I can't tell which one's more comfy as well. Like there was like no difference between them. I end up just leaving them behind in the apartments. And then I got like a text, like once we had left, we flew out to Thailand. I got a text from like the people who owned the apartment on Airbnb. And they mentioned like, I left so much stuff behind. Do they want me to hold it for them? But I didn't think that I'd go back to Dubai, and I've never been back to Dubai since then. So they ended up donating it, I think. Here's an interesting one for you. I actually think I've wasted a lot of money on things that are related to pleasure and distraction. So if you've watched my videos for ages, or the people who are OG fans, they'll know that one of the first things I spent money on when I started to make money from this was a fancy gym, like a premium health club back in the UK. In the UK, gyms often cost like $10 or $15, but this one that I saw cost about $150, so it was 10 times more expensive than the alternatives. But it was kind of like the fancy one, more prestigious. It was like better facilities. The gym inside was pretty nice, which is often quite rare in these like nice health clubs, but it also had like 3 saunas and 3 swimming pools and whatever. And I had a pretty good time there, right? I hyped it up a lot a few years ago, and if I go back to UK now, I often go back to that gym just because that's where like I have some friends and stuff. But what's interesting about paying for access in this like fancy kind of prestigious places, it actually overall led to a worse life. Like think about this, from 2020 to 2021 was COVID. Gyms were closed. So the way that I would exercise was I used the gymnastic rings, like the calisthenics equipment. And also I had some like basic bare bones equipment in my garage. I had like a barbell and some dumbbells and like a shitty little squat rack and a bench press. I made do with that. I built a pretty okay physique. I was like super lean. I wasn't big, but I was like really lean and I was shredded. And it was like nice time training. What's interesting was during this time, I was so happy. And think about that. Like think about why I would be happy. It's COVID, but I'm going out for a run every single day into nature, looking for a tree that I can hang up my gymnastic rings, my like calisthenics equipment to go train on. Then I'm running back to my home and training in the garage there. And I was exercising for a solid like 2-3 hours a day. That, along with the fact that I was being disciplined, I was on monk mode, I wasn't wasting time, led me to have probably one of the best seasons of life that I had had ever. Now imagine this, I upgrade my gym to the fancy gym, and the ROI is there because there's so much better facilities and whatever, but there's also more distraction. What was the distraction? Well, now I'm working out in a gym which has other people compared to just by myself, and especially at that point, and even now, I'm the kind of guy who can get distracted by like girls and seeing other guys and thinking shit, like if there's a girl you start dating, or if there's a guy who maybe looks at you weird, and then suddenly I'm thinking of some bullshit, I'm maybe getting anxious, or I'm thinking about starting in martial arts, and I'm suddenly getting distracted from the original goal and everything. Basically what happened once I joined this new gym was I got led astray. I started to just start dating more, and I had way more urges because you're going around these fancy gyms where girls are dressed like with skin tight revealing clothing. So the money I spent on this gym, which is only $150 a month, was worth it. But you've got to stay aware of what happens to your life overall, not just with how much money you spend. And overall my life did get worse because I just did not control all of the urges and impulses that arose at that moment. I ended up falling off my sort of self-improvement monk mode disciplined period, and I undeniably would have been a lot more successful right now if I didn't do that, if I didn't go put myself in that kind of like quite degenerate, superficial environments. That means that even though the gym cost $150 a month, I probably would have made like an extra $1 million if I never signed up to that gym and I just kept on like keeping my head down, staying focused, staying on monk mode, staying disciplined, not doing any casual sex, casual dating or anything, I would have been quite sizably more successful now. So that's just an interesting point. Be careful to not spend money on things that are quite degenerate and distracting. For example, nightclubs, parties, those kinds of things. They might not cost a lot. Like, for example, to go to the club, like not like some fancy one in Miami, but you know, like some normal like UK nightclub might cost you like £30 for the entire night, right? It's like, it's made for like broke students. You drink a little bit beforehand, then you go out, maybe you buy a couple of drinks in there, you spend a total of like £30, whatever. That's not actually super expensive. But what's expensive is your health, the lack of sleep, the degeneracy, the ear damage, all of that stuff is what the real expense is. And along with that, now this is going to be a controversial one, I do think that almost every trip that I've been on, every holiday that I've been on, was basically a waste of time and a waste of money. What I've realized now is that I actually get the most fun in my life when I'm growing. And that comes from just the hard discipline, fitness, and work where I'm just making a bunch of progress and I'm staying focused. When I've taken holidays to like Thailand and I've traveled around and I've taken holidays to Mexico, to Greece, to Amsterdam, most of the time I actually wouldn't look back and be sort of grateful for the trip, because holidays and time off are not really for men like me. They're for more of the cuter guys, if you know what I mean. Chances are, if you've watched this far, you're not one of them. There's like those cute guys, you know, like the kind of privileged cute guys with no worries in the world. Holidays are for those kinds of people. They'll go on a trip and they'll have a good time, they'll spend a few $1,000s and they'll come back with some nice memories. Me and you will go on a trip and we're thinking of how to work during the trip. We're not thinking about, let's go find ourselves in Thailand. We're thinking about, let's go train Muay Thai in Thailand, right? We're not thinking about, oh, let's go find ourselves and relax on the beach in Bali. We're thinking about growing the online business, or, you know, health maxing or getting fit or whatever. Now, if that sounds like you, if you're a guy who's always switched on and always wants to be hardworking, and you know that time off isn't very fun. For example, like, how would it feel if you didn't work or study or, you know, watch videos like this and you just kind of like sat around all day? Some guys would say, oh, I'd love that. Other guys would be like, oh, I'd be so boring. That's what a lot of like holidays can be like. And maybe I'll change my mind in the future. Maybe I'll end up having like better holidays. I hope that I would. But so far, almost every single one that I've taken has always had like a weird sense of depression, in the sense that like certain guys are just supposed to be switched on, working, grinding. It's just how certain men are built. Whereas other men, the unsuccessful, usually are the ones who actually can take time off guilt-free. It might be better to actually be one of them in terms of life quality, happiness, and satisfaction, because they're able to just be happier than the guys who are burdened with like consciousness, intelligence, and success or whatever, like, you know, the sort of champion mindset who always needs to be working and grinding on something. But I've personally found that basically 90% of the trips that I've taken have been quite wasteful. There's thousands of dollars on the flight, the hotel, the villa, and then I end up having less fun in the month that, for example, I go and like, you know, randomly go to Thailand for a month or something, compared to when I'm just at home grinding. The only difference now, like, this is the first time where I'm on like a trip and it actually genuinely feels really productive, is because I don't even feel like I'm on a trip anymore. I actually like literally live here. Like, I have my home here, I have the long visa, I have like stability here. I'm not in holiday mode. I'm not like sightseeing or doing any tourist bullshit. I literally like wake up, work, go to the same gym at the same time, I eat the same foods. You know, it's like normal routine mode, right? So this feels positive. Just quickly, I'll tell you some things that I've spent money on that actually I felt have had the ROI, and the one that is in my mind the most is personal training. So right now I do one-to-one kickboxing coaching with one of the pro fighters in the gym that I train at, and that is incredible. So I think that costs me about £40 per session, per like 1 hour, which is absolutely worth it. This is coming from like a beginner, so I might be just wrong in saying this, but it seems to me like you genuinely make like more than 10 times faster progress doing a one-to-one with a good coach than you do showing up to like the martial arts classes. I think the only classes that I think potentially are worth it are jujitsu classes where you're naturally training with someone else and you're getting a bit of like feedback from them. But with striking, like for example with Muay Thai, boxing, and kickboxing, I won't lie, I've been to like a fair few gyms around the world, like martial arts gyms, probably about like 15, 20 that, you know, I've like kind of done one session at least, or a couple sessions. And I will say, like, I've never been impressed with a striking class before, because it seems to me like 90% of the class of like a martial arts class, the time is just wasted. I've been to pretty good gyms before and it's just so strange. It's like they'll do some massive fucking stupid ass warm-up where they've got everyone doing lunges and bodyweight exercises. Then it's like partner drills, which seems so ridiculous to me. Now, again, I'm just a beginner, so I might be completely wrong. But basically, most martial arts classes, public classes, are filled up with the time basically being spent where the teacher will tell you like, okay, do this, get into pairs. And one guy holds his gloves up like this, and the other guy practices going like some stupid ass combo. Jab, jab, slip, slip, jab, right, uppercut, hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, jab, jab, slip, like, you know, some weird ass fucking long combo. Then you just have like this other person who doesn't know what they're doing holding their gloves up like this, like not even pads. And you're literally training to be inaccurate, not aiming for the chin. The other person just awkwardly stood there. You're trying to remember what the fucking the combo was, and your form is shit. You're not learning anything when you do that. It just seems completely ridiculous to me, right? But when you get onto pads, so that's where the instructor will hold the pad and you actually like hit the pad hard. That's often where you can make progress, because when you're doing pads, the instructor will look at your form and give you some feedback. I feel like in a martial arts class, that's the only time that you actually improve, is when you're getting feedback on your technique. And what's beautiful about a one-to-one session is you basically can tell the coach, I just kind of want to do pads for the entire hour. Like that's what I do with my coach. We do like the pool noodle thing for like 2 minutes, and then we just do pads for the rest of the hour. So we're on pads for 1 hour. The class gets onto pads for about 6 minutes, 4 minutes or 6 minutes. That's why a one-to-one martial arts session is so valuable, because for an entire hour you should be getting immediate feedback from the coach, compared to a class where you might only get feedback for like 2 to 4 to 6 minutes during the entire session. Like I would insist, if you're someone who wants to get into martial arts, I would insist that if you are going to do a one-to-one, you make sure to tell the coach you don't want to do any of the bullshit bodyweight exercises. Like I used to do a weekly one-to-one session in a kickboxing gym back in my hometown, and the gym was pretty good, but the one-to-one sessions was just stupid as fuck. It was like, again, it was like 15 minutes of bodyweight lunges and push-ups and squats, like bodyweight, right? And I could say, bro, I can do fucking hundreds of those. I squat like fucking double my body weight. I'm not doing anything there. 10-minute random warm-up, which is like, and I'm already warm. I remember once, this was like back home, I said to the coach like, oh, I cycled here, can we skip the warm-up? And he went, no. That was the day where I didn't come back after that. I was like, oh, this is retarded, right? They've got some weird strict rule where the person needs to do the warm-up, but like I'm sweating, like I've literally rode my bike here. The full session should just be on you getting feedback for your technique. So I feel like I'm making super fast progress because I'm doing the one-to-one sessions, but also because my coach is like fucking sick as well. The next thing that's been absolutely worth it to spend money on has been good employees. So you're probably not there just yet, but if eventually you want to hire employees for like, you know, you've been growing your YouTube channel right now or your Instagram. Let's say if one of your pieces of content pop off and go viral, you could actually hire your first employee within like a few weeks or a month from now. And one of the first employees, or this, let's say the first 2 employees that you'd probably want to get, is a video editor, because nowadays a lot of business relies on content, just like YouTube videos and Instagram and TikTok. So you have an editor who's awesome, who just puts together really good clips of you. And also an assistant. That's probably one of the highest ROI roles that you can hire for. So my sister is my assistant, which is fucking awesome, because I haven't checked my emails in like 2 years. Like just think about that for a second. I like don't look at those kinds of apps that everyone else needs to. I don't check my own mail. My sister checks it, checks if I need to hear about it or whatever, or just deals with stuff herself. And if there's anything that actually requires me, she'll come and get me if it's like absolutely required. I don't have to do any of this. So imagine like I'm just working, or maybe I'm making some food, and my sister will come in and she's like, oh, I need a picture of you for this. I'm signing you up to this website that we need. I didn't make the account on this website or anything like that. She comes up, takes like a picture of me, and then she's just made the website that we need or whatever. You know, like all of that stuff is completely taken care of. Imagine that for a second. Any website, like any random website that you need to sign up to for whatever reason, you don't even have to put in your details anymore because your assistant does it. Imagine you don't even need to have like the email app on your phone because your assistant takes care of everything. And if she needs you for whatever, she texts you on like WhatsApp or something. You end up saving hours every single week, which is so powerful. You might be thinking like, oh, but you know, I don't really mind. But that's the reason why so many people struggle with becoming successful. Becoming successful is about stopping checking your email, stopping checking your messages. It's about not scrolling, not checking your inbox. All of these things are a distraction from the big work task that's going to take you from like 0 to 10 to 25K. But when you have someone checking all these things for you, it just means that you save so much mental bandwidth that you can then put back into the business. The final thing that I've spent money on, which I think is absolutely worth it, is high quality food. So here in Bali, I go to like this health food store and I buy the food and like whatever I need, like peanut butter, whatever, from just the same place over and over again. And for most of my meals, I actually get them delivered from restaurants that I know don't use seed oils. They use like healthy ingredients, and it's all like healthy meals. Like I'll get like beef liver delivered, bone broth, omega-3 eggs, like those kinds of meals. I'll get them delivered from restaurants which are like super nice, and it's literally delivered right to my door. And so that's absolutely worth it. Back in the UK, I used to get meat delivered from a farm that would promise that like their cows were like, you know, like treated nicely, and they had like awards and stuff. And they even didn't even wrap their steaks in plastic. They would put it in like what's called butcher's paper, so that there was like less plastic that had like kind of touched the meat and everything. So it was like a high quality farm. It was like grass fed, pasture raised, something like that, like organic steak, something like that. And I'd order a bunch of steaks from there. Spending money on food like that is definitely nice, because then you know that your food that you're eating hasn't got some weird fucked up ingredients or low quality meat that's like got some weird stuff wrong with it, because this is affecting your health. Do the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it. Mwah.